I think whatever's left of the Jimmy Butler slander or the people that don't think that Jimmy Butler is a true superstar or, whatever half-baked criticisms like that of Jimmy have been floating around for the past, I don't know, maybe like 3 to 5 years. I think we can finally put that to rest. Jimmy Butler with 56 points, franchise playoff record, which was surprising. I didn't even know Dwayne Wade never scored 56 or, Alonzo Mourning. I didn't know that there wasn't, another Heat great that, that hadn't scored 56. But yeah, Jimmy Butler, the only dude ever wearing a Heat jersey to score 56 in the playoffs. Just an insane performance by Jimmy Butler. This dude is just made of he's just built different. He's made of playoff stuff. Don't know why the Bucks weren't just straight up denying him the ball after he put 24 up in the first half. If you're a Budenholzer, I think you have to go into that break, into the break between halves, and just kind of tell your team, like, all right, that dude's got 24, like, we need to limit his touches. I guess, to be fair, in the course of the game, there was like kind of a stretch, basically the entirety of the third quarter, where Jimmy was like trying to let other guys get involved, and the Bucks kind of like took control of the game. And it looked like the Bucks were really gonna just like drive it home. Honestly, it looked like they had like weathered the early storm. Jimmy Butler's first half 24, and I mean Brook Lopez played insane. He was hitting a lot of tough shots. The Miami just didn't have the size on the floor to really challenge Brook, especially when he was going downhill towards the basket. Him and Giannis really should have worked that pick and roll a lot more in that game. They should have came a lot more. A lot of their possessions, especially down the stretch of the game, should have been just coming out of half court sets. And I mean, like I said, the Heat just don't have the size to deal with a Giannis and Brook Lopez pick and roll. They really should have been exploiting that, but instead, they were just jacking up a bunch of bad shots. And I mean, Jimmy Butler just Bam is a great player. Bam is obviously, he's an amazing player. But it's like, who's the third guy on the Heat? Even if Tyler Herro's hand wasn't broken, it's like, he's nothing really crazy. He's not Bradley Beal or, he's not one of these elite scorers. Like, he's not a dude who can just really go out on any given night and just get you 22 points. He could, Tyler Herro gets hot, obviously, and he could work against like, weaker defenses and weaker coverages, but I mean, Jimmy Butler's, this is like Brady-esque, the way Jimmy Butler's kind of just like amalgamated this 3-1 series lead with really like nothing. Like, I don't want to say nothing because, again, Bam is a great player, but I mean, if you look at the Bucks roster and you look at the Heat roster, I mean, it's like, just for the sake of intellectual honesty, like, we can all agree that, like, Jimmy's roster is I mean, who is Gabe Vincent? Like, if you had told me when the series started, the Heat would be at 3-1, I would say, is Giannis hurt? And you would say, yeah, but he came back. And I'd be like, okay. And then if you told me Tyler Herro's hand was broken, I'd be like, so it's just what, Jimmy Butler and Bam? And you'd be like, yeah. And my jaw would be on the floor. Like, Jimmy Butler I mean, some of the shots he was making were just this. You could just see this dude was just exhausted. Is not the word, And I don't think there's any player that plays better when they're just absolutely at the end of their rope, stamina wise. I don't think there's a dude that plays better exhausted than Jimmy Butler. He just, I think Kenny said it too on the after show. When you talk about willing the team to victory, is one of the great cliches of sports. But there's a reason why those cliches exist, and like a performance like that is like one of those examples of why cliches exist. Because Jimmy Butler just straight up, 56 points on the Bucks defense is just unreal. Like I said, I was surprised they weren't just straight up denying him the ball coming out of the second half. But I guess Budenholzer was ready to just do the Kobe strategy and just let Jimmy go off and just limit everybody else. But, Duncan Robinson hit some big shots early. Caleb Martin hit some big shots late. Bam hit a couple big shots in between that time. Like, I think if you're Budenholzer, right now, you got to tell your team the one thing that the Bucks can take away from that is that they had the size. They have the size to like get consecutive buckets and win the game. They just weren't taking advantage of what they needed to do. And so, that's really all I have for the Bucks locker room in terms of, things that you could tell them. Like, this is just, this is going to be tough psychologically from the Bucks to bounce back from Giannis to bounce back from Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. I was just in awe, watching that performance. Just Jimmy Butler was, I've said it before that Jimmy Butler is not much of a three-pointer, but, him hitting those back-to-back threes, on those two sequences was just, I feel like when Jimmy got the rebound while he was laying down, we all should have known that something crazy was about to happen, though. Like, this dude is just unreal. What a game from Jimmy Butler. Personally, I really didn't have a dog in this fight, but I definitely want Jimmy Butler to close out the Bucks now, just because what a story it would be. The Heat were a playing team. I think I had them getting swept by the Bucks or losing 4-1 to the Bucks, and now they're about to win 4-1 to the Bucks. So just what a story it would be if Jimmy Butler. And that would, again, if the 56 points and going up 3-1 on the 1 seed don't, erase any of the doubt, any of the criticisms of Jimmy Butler being a superstar, I'm sure finishing off the 1 seed, will certainly, that has to be the last straw for any criticism, any critique of Jimmy Butler's superstar status. Like, the dude is just unreal. He's just, I always go back and forth on like, the playoff Jimmy, whatever. Like, anybody who's famous for, this dude hits another gear in the playoffs. This is the one dude where I'm like, oh yeah, like, I know like the intensity level raises in playoff and everybody's play is supposed to raise in the playoffs, but Jimmy Butler is like really the one dude that's like, it jumps off the screen. It's like very apparent that like his game he gets better in the most important time of the basketball year. Like, he's just built different. We don't have a lot of superstars right now like Jimmy Butler. There are a lot of guys who are superstars in the regular season, and then the playoffs come, and they're not getting the whistles, they're not getting the easy shots, they're not getting they're not getting the easy coverages. They're not getting the same look 4 times in a row, and they start to fold. Jimmy Butler is definitely not one of those guys. And I mean, what a game from Jimmy Butler. Just absolutely insane. On the West Coast, there's another guy. He's pretty good. And he had 22 and 20. I think that is the first, if I recall correctly, they put a graphic up that said that the first time since Shaq in 04, LeBron's 22 and 20 game last night was the first time since Shaq in 04. So, I mean, LeBron taking over that game late and in overtime, just a couple drives to the basket. I felt like even in his quote unquote like response game to Dillon Brooks, I feel like he was in that. Yeah, I mean, I still give him props for it because it was a good game, but I feel like he's just been like, I've been using the word disengaged, but maybe disengaged isn't the word. He's just been like really passive over these past couple weeks, maybe the past month. He's been really passive. We haven't really seen much in the way of LeBron just like absolutely just taking over a game. But last night, fourth quarter into overtime, LeBron James just, I mean, you get the drive to tie it on I believe it was on Xavier Tillman, and then the overtime bucket on Dillon Brooks. I really would have wished he'd hit that free throw, but I mean at that point the Lakers were up 4 under a minute. I believe the Lakers they were up 4 with under a minute. The Lakers they're doing a lot of I don't understand why the Lakers were like getting away from, I meant to say they were getting away from their pick and roll because it was working. I don't, especially later in the game when they went on that cold streak after D'Angelo Russell hit those 3 straight threes, which was absolutely huge. But then the Lakers went on like a cold streak, and I felt like they should have just kind of been working that pick and roll. The Grizzlies really had no answers for it. Even when the Grizzlies played drop, they were getting annihilated. And even when they came up, they were getting, there was a play where they got Vanderbilt in a corner on a backdoor cut, and he got an easy dunk. So it felt like there was really nothing the Grizzlies could do to that pick and roll. It was a really, really like, both teams struggled offensively. Anthony Davis was non-existent for probably the first like 85% of the game. He just wasn't even a factor, and obviously in overtime, I mean later in regulation as well, he had some big plays on defense, and he had a couple putbacks off misses, and then in overtime, he had that big play in overtime. And so, I mean, in a game like that you like to see, that's a good sign, especially when you have teams with older superstars. In the playoffs, when you have kind of like a slugfest game like that, like a real messy, like an ugly game like that, you like to see that, at the end of the game, that ultimately, just the experience of your superstars prevail. And I mean, yeah, LeBron James was great at the end of the game. He definitely got some help, obviously, from D'Angelo Russell. Austin Reeves had 23. That was big. Anthony Davis, like I said, he made a couple big plays towards the end of regulations. But LeBron, just vintage performance from LeBron James, just, taking over at the end of the game. That full court shot, well, it wasn't a full court shot, but it was like a 3-quarter shot that he hit at the end of regulation was funny too. if that had went, the building would have exploded if they had won the game. But yeah, just a really a night of the play-ins. Honestly, it's kind of wild that we're sitting here talking about the Lakers. I mean, being a playing team, the Heat being a playing team. Obviously, two very different stories in terms of their how they got to where they were. But it's I don't think it's that crazy that the Lakers are where they are, especially with the injuries that the Grizzlies have. No Brandon Clark, no Steven Adams. But like I said, if you had told me that the Heat were going to be up 3-1 on the Bucks, there is just, I would have never believed you. Shout out Jimmy Butler. Like, seriously, I think as a community, like the NBA community, we need to come together, at least the majority of us, because there are always going to be like weird haters, whatever. There's going to be weirdos. But the majority of us need to come together and kind of just like etch it in stone as like a non-debatable point, like one of these non-debatable points, like Anthony Davis is injury prone, Steph Curry's gonna hit threes, Jimmy Butler's a superstar. Like, we need to start debating Jimmy Butler's superstar status, because this dude is just the real deal. He, shout out Jimmy Butler. He just an unreal performance. Unreal. Never in my life would I ever thought that I'd be watching, Jimmy Butler about to put up the franchise playoff record. Just insane. Just an insane effort by Jimmy Butler. And this is, the story of the Bucks is, well, if you get closed out by the AC, and like, what is it? It's like 92% of the time a team that's up 3-1 wins the series. Like, where do you go if you're the Bucks? Like, do you fire Budenholzer? Do you make changes to the roster? Do you do both those things? Do you do neither of those things? Like, the main critique on Budenholzer has always been like, his adjustments are either non-existent or they're not very impactful. And I think, like I said earlier, coming out into the second half, you don't deny Jimmy Butler the ball. You don't really make it tough on him. You just kind of throw Drew Holiday on him and just call it a day. Yeah, if I'm in the Bucks front office, I'm kind of side-eyeing Budenholzer right now. I know there's been some weird things that have happened in that series, like Giannis's injury was certainly like, that wasn't great, and you go 1-1 without him in this series, and but yeah, if I'm in the Bucks front office, I'm probably side-eyeing Budenholzer. And if Budenholzer doesn't pull the Bucks out of this hole, I would say I would can him, because like I said, this has been the main critique of Budenholzer really his whole career, is the lack of impactful or the lack of just any adjustments at all. And the Bucks are in a position where they look like they're really going to pay for it. Yeah, that's all I really had to say. Just like a quick two game night, but super. There's a lot of content to coming away from that 2-game night with. Definitely leave a like if you like what you hear. Subscribe. If you don't like what you hear, tell me in the comments why you disagree with me. And I hope everyone has a nice day.